The opulent chandeliers of the Blackwood Manor cast a golden glow over the bustling ballroom, filled with the gentle clink of champagne flutes and the melodious laughter of New York's elite. Amidst the sea of silk and diamonds, 25-year-old Lily Evans stood out like a sparrow among peacocks. Her second-hand dress, carefully mended and pressed, hung awkwardly on her petite frame as she navigated through the crowd with a tray of hors d'oeuvres balanced precariously in her hands. Lily's emerald eyes darted nervously around the room, desperately trying to avoid the condescending glares and hushed whispers that followed her every move. She had always dreamed of attending such a grand affair, but never like this, as a lowly maid, invisible to all except when they needed something. "Watch where you're going, you clumsy oaf," a shrill voice pierced through the ambient chatter. Lily felt her heart sink as she recognized the speaker, Veronica Sinclair, the Blackwoods' daughter and the very epitome of entitled wealth. Veronica's perfectly manicured hand brushed imaginary dirt from her designer gown as she glowered at Lily. "I swear, Daddy should fire the lot of you and get some proper help. It's embarrassing having to mingle with the help at our own party." Lily bit her lip, fighting back tears as she mumbled an apology. She turned to leave, only to bump into someone else, sending her tray clattering to the ground. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the source of the disturbance. I am so sorry," Lily stammered, dropping to her knees to clean up the mess. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she heard the tittering laughter of the guests around her. "Allow me to help," a deep, gentle voice said. Lily looked up, her breath catching in her throat as she met the warm brown eyes of James Blackwood, the family's eldest son and heir to the Blackwood fortune. James knelt beside her, his expensive tuxedo a stark contrast to the polished floor as he helped gather the scattered appetizers. Lily couldn't believe it. James Blackwood, the man she had secretly admired from afar for months, was actually acknowledging her existence. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood," Lily whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. James smiled, a dimple appearing in his cheek. "Please, call me James. And it's no trouble at all." "Lily," she supplied, her heart fluttering at the way he said her name. "Lily," he repeated softly. "A beautiful name for a beautiful." "James!" Veronica's shrill voice cut through their moment like a knife. "What on earth are you doing? Get away from that clumsy maid before she ruins your tuxedo too." James' expression hardened as he stood, helping Lily to her feet. "That's enough, Veronica. There's no need to be cruel." Veronica's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Cruel? I'm simply stating facts. She doesn't belong here, James. Look at her, she's practically begging for attention in that pathetic excuse for a dress." Lily felt her cheeks burn hotter, if that was even possible. She wanted nothing more than for the ground to open up and swallow her whole. "I said, that's enough," James growled, his voice low and threatening. The nearby guests exchanged worried glances, sensing the tension in the air. Veronica tossed her perfectly coiffed hair over her shoulder. "Oh, don't tell me you actually care about this little nobody? How quaint. I suppose it makes sense, you always did have a soft spot for charity cases." James opened his mouth to retort, but Lily couldn't bear to hear another word. She turned and fled, pushing past the gawking guests as she ran from the ballroom. Tears blurred her vision as she raced through the winding corridors of Blackwood Manor, finally bursting out into the cool night air of the sprawling gardens. Lily collapsed onto a stone bench, her body racked with sobs. How could she have been so foolish? To think that someone like James Blackwood would ever see her as anything more than a servant, it was a dream destined to be shattered. As her tears subsided, replaced by a dull ache in her chest, Lily became aware of hushed voices nearby. Curiosity overtook her misery, and she crept closer to the source of the sound, concealing herself behind a large topiary. "Can't keep this up much longer, Richard," a woman's voice hissed. Lily recognized it as belonging to Eleanor Blackwood, the family matriarch. The investments are failing, and we're hemorrhaging money. If word gets out. It won't, Richard Blackwood, James' father, interrupted gruffly. I've got it under control. We just need a little more time. Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. Time? We don't have time, Richard. We're on the brink of financial ruin, and you're throwing lavish parties as if nothing's wrong. Lily's eyes widened in shock. The Blackwoods broke? It seemed impossible. They were the pinnacle of New York society, known for their vast wealth and influence. Keep your voice down, Richard snapped. We can't afford even a whisper of this getting out. The merger with the Sinclairs is our only hope. Once James and Veronica are married, their combined fortunes will be enough to... To what? Eleanor interrupted. To cover up your embezzlement? Your gambling debts? How long do you think we can keep this charade going? Lily's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The perfect, pristine image of the Blackwood family was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. As long as we need to, Richard growled. And if anyone gets in our way, well, we've dealt with obstacles before, haven't we? A chill ran down Lily's spine at the menacing tone in his voice. She backed away slowly, her mind reeling from the revelations she just overheard. As she turned to flee, her foot caught on the hem of her dress, sending her tumbling to the ground with a yelp. Who's there? Richard's voice boomed through the darkness. Lily scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest as she ran blindly through the gardens. She could hear footsteps behind her, growing closer with each passing second. Just as she thought she was about to be caught, a strong hand gripped her arm, pulling her into a shadowy alcove. Lily opened her mouth to scream, but another hand clamped over it, muffling the sound. Shoo, a familiar voice whispered in her ear. It's me, James. Don't make a sound. Lily nodded, her body trembling as she pressed against James' solid form. They stood in tense silence as Richard's heavy footsteps approached, then gradually faded into the distance. When they were sure the coast was clear, James released her. Lily turned to face him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. James, You heard them, didn't you? He asked, his expression grim. Lily nodded mutely, unsure of what to say. James ran a hand through his tousled hair, looking more vulnerable than Lily had ever seen him. I'm so sorry you got caught up in this mess, Lily. But now that you know, I need your help. Lily blinked in surprise. My help? But I'm just a maid. What could I possibly do? James took her hands in his touch sending shivers down her spine despite the gravity of the situation. You're so much more than that, Lily. I've seen the way you work, how kind and clever you are. I think you might be the key to unraveling this whole conspiracy. Lily's mind raced with the implications of what James was saying. She was just a simple girl from a small town in Ohio, dreaming of a better life. How could she possibly get involved in something so far beyond her understanding? And yet, as she looked into James' pleading eyes, she felt a surge of determination. This was her chance, not just to help the man she secretly loved, but to prove to herself and everyone else that she was more than just a clumsy maid. Okay, Lily said, squaring her shoulders. I'll help you. But James, what exactly are we up against? James' expression darkened. A web of lies, corruption, and danger that goes deeper than you can imagine. My family's reputation, our entire legacy, it's all built on a house of cards. And if we don't act fast, it's going to come crashing down, taking all of us with it. As the gravity of the situation settled over them, Lily realized that her life would never be the same. She had stumbled into a world of secrets and betrayal, where nothing was as it seemed. But with James by her side, she felt a glimmer of hope. Little did Lily know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her courage, her heart, and everything she thought she knew about herself. The secrets of Blackwood Manor were about to unravel, and Lily Evans, the overlooked, underestimated maid, would be at the center of it all. In the distance, the sounds of the lavish party continued, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. As Lily and James shared a look of determination, the first drops of rain began to fall, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for the trials that lay ahead. The stage was set, the players in position. And Lily Evans, the girl who had always dreamed of a fairy tale, was about to discover that sometimes, the most extraordinary stories begin in the most unlikely of places, even in the shadows of a glittering ballroom, where a maid dared to dream of something more. As the weeks passed, Lily found herself living a double life. By day, she continued her duties as a maid, scrubbing floors and polishing silver with a newfound purpose. Her ears were always open, catching snippets of conversation and noting the comings and goings of the Blackwood family and their associates. By night, she met with James in secret, piecing together the complex puzzle of the Blackwood family's deception. They would rendezvous in the forgotten corners of the vast estate, the dusty library, the overgrown rose garden, the abandoned greenhouse, always on guard, always looking over their shoulders. "It's worse than we thought," James confided one evening, his voice barely above a whisper as they huddled in the dim light of the greenhouse. "My father's not just embezzling from the company. He's involved with some dangerous people, loan sharks, underground gambling rings. If we don't find a way to expose this carefully, it could put all of us in danger." Lily's heart raced, both from the proximity to James and the weight of his words. "But surely we can go to the authorities? There must be someone we can trust." James shook his head, his expression pained. "That's the problem. My father's influence runs deep. Police, judges, even some government officials, we don't know who's in his pocket. One wrong move, and we could end up silenced, or worse." A chill ran down Lily's spine. She had known getting involved would be dangerous, but the reality of their situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't just about saving the Blackwood family's reputation anymore, it was about justice, and potentially their very lives. "What about your mother?" Lily asked softly. "From what I overheard that night, it seemed like she wasn't happy with what your father was doing." James' eyes clouded with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "My mother, she's trapped, Lily. She's known about my father's dealings for years, but she's too afraid to stand up to him. The Blackwood name, our social standing, it's everything to her. The thought of losing it all. I think it terrifies her more than my father does." Lily reached out, placing her hand gently on James' arm. "And Veronica? Does she know?" A bitter laugh escaped James' lips. "Veronica is too self-absorbed to notice anything beyond her own reflection. She's so focused on the upcoming merger with the Sinclairs, planning the wedding of the century. If she has any inkling of what's really going on, she's choosing to ignore it." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Veronica's shrill voice suddenly cut through the night air. "James? James, where are you? We need to discuss the seating arrangements for the engagement party." Lily and James froze, their eyes wide with panic. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path leading to the greenhouse, growing louder with each passing second. "Quick," James whispered urgently, guiding Lily behind a large fern. They crouched down, hardly daring to breathe as the greenhouse door creaked open. "James?" Veronica called out again, her tone laced with irritation. "I swear, if you're out here brooding again." Lily's heart pounded so loudly she was sure Veronica would hear it. She could feel James' warm breath on her neck, his body tense beside her. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Veronica let out an exasperated sigh. Ugh, fine. Be that way. But don't come crying to me when Mother throws a fit about the table arrangements. The door slammed shut, and the sound of Veronica's heels faded into the distance. Lily and James remained frozen in place for several more minutes, afraid to move lest it be a trick. When they finally emerged from their hiding spot, Lily found herself face to face with James, their noses almost touching. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. But then reality came crashing back, and James stepped away, clearing his throat. That was too close, he murmured, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit Lily had come to find endearing. We need to be more careful. If anyone finds out about our investigation. Lily nodded, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment in her chest. I know. But James, we can't keep this up forever. Sooner or later, someone's going to notice something's amiss. James sighed heavily, the weight of their secret investigation clearly taking its toll. You're right. We need to accelerate our plans. There's a charity gala coming up next month. All of New York's elite will be there, including many of my father's associates. If we can find concrete evidence by then, we might have a chance to expose everything without tipping our hand too soon. Lily's mind raced with the possibilities. A gala meant more guests, more opportunities to eavesdrop, to search for clues. But it also meant more risks, more chances of being caught. I'll do whatever it takes, Lily said firmly, surprising herself with her own determination. But James, what happens after? If we succeed in exposing your father's crimes, what becomes of your family? Of you? The vulnerability in James' eyes made Lily's heart ache. I don't know, he admitted softly. Everything I've ever known, my entire world, it will all come crashing down. But it's the right thing to do. I can't stand by and watch my father destroy more lives with his greed. Impulsively, Lily reached out and took James' hand in hers. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. I promise. For a moment, James looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. Then, just as quickly, he pulled back, his expression guarded once more. We should head back, he said, his voice strained. It's getting late, and we can't risk being seen together. As they made their way back to the manor, carefully avoiding the well-lit paths, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was balancing on a knife's edge. On one side lay the safe, predictable life she had always known, the life of an overlooked maid, invisible to the world of glitz and glamour that surrounded her. On the other side was a dangerous unknown, filled with risks and heartache, but also the promise of justice, and perhaps something more. Little did Lily know that her world was about to be turned upside down in ways she could never have imagined. As she and James parted ways that night, the air thick with unspoken emotions and mounting tension, neither of them realized they were being watched. In the shadows of a nearby topiary, a figure lurked, eyes narrowed with suspicion. Veronica Sinclair may have appeared self-absorbed and vapid to most, but she was far more observant than anyone gave her credit for. She had noticed the furtive glances between her fiancé and the maid, the hushed conversations that ceased the moment she entered a room. Something was going on, and Veronica was determined to find out what it was, no matter the cost. The following days passed in a blur of activity as preparations for the charity gala kicked into high gear. Lily found herself run ragged, polishing silver, arranging flowers, and attending to the ever-increasing demands of the Blackwood family and their guests. But beneath her demure exterior, her mind was constantly working, piecing together snippets of overheard conversations and searching for any clue that might help their investigation. One afternoon, as Lily was dusting the study, she overheard a heated phone conversation between Richard Blackwood and an unknown party. Listen, you can't back out now, Richard hissed into the receiver, his normally composed demeanor cracking under the strain. We're in too deep. If this deal falls through, we're all going down. Lily's heart raced as she strained to hear more, but a noise in the hallway forced her to resume her dusting, lest she be caught eavesdropping. As she turned to leave the study, her elbow accidentally knocked a small leather-bound book from the shelf. It fell open, revealing a series of numbers and initials that made no sense to her. Quickly, Lily snapped a photo with her phone before replacing the book, her hands shaking with a mixture of fear and excitement. That evening, as she met James in their usual spot in the greenhouse, Lily could barely contain herself. "I think I found something," she whispered, showing him the photo. "It was in your father's study. Do you recognize any of these names or numbers?" James studied the image intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Some of these initials, they match up with some of my father's business associates. But these numbers, they're too large to be simple account balances. Could they be coordinates?" As they huddled together, poring over the mysterious ledger, neither of them noticed the greenhouse door creaking open ever so slightly. Veronica's eyes glittered with malice as she watched the pair, her suspicions confirmed. So, the little maid thought she could steal her fiancé, did she? And James, he was clearly hiding something from her. Well, two could play at that game. Silently, Veronica slipped away, her mind already formulating a plan. She would bide her time, gather more information, and when the moment was right, she would crush this little uprising and secure her place as the future Mrs. Blackwood once and for all. Meanwhile, unaware of the new threat looming over them, Lily and James continued their clandestine meetings, each encounter drawing them closer together despite their best efforts to maintain a professional distance. One rainy evening, as they pored over documents in the library, a crack of thunder made Lily jump, sending papers scattering across the floor. As they both knelt to gather them, their hands brushed, sending an electric current through Lily's body. She looked up, meeting James' intense gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "Lily," James murmured, his voice husky with emotion. I can't keep pretending. These past few weeks, working with you, getting to know you. I've never met anyone like you." Lily's heart pounded in her chest, hope and fear warring within her. "James, we can't. Your engagement, the investigation, there's too much at stake." But even as the words left her lips, Lily found herself leaning closer, drawn in by the warmth of James' gaze. Their lips met in a tender, tentative kiss that quickly deepened, years of pent-up longing and forbidden desire pouring out in a single, breathtaking moment. When they finally broke apart, both flushed and breathless, reality came crashing back down around them. Lily stumbled to her feet, her mind reeling. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, tears pricking at her eyes. "This was a mistake. I have to go." Before James could stop her, Lily fled from the library, her heart breaking with every step. She ran through the winding corridors of Blackwood Manor, not caring who saw her or what they might think. All she knew was that she had crossed a line, one that could jeopardize everything they had worked for. As she burst out into the rain-soaked gardens, Lily collided with a solid figure. Strong hands steadied her, and she looked up to find herself face to face with Carter Sinclair, Veronica's brother and James' soon-to-be brother-in-law. "Whoa there, little one," Carter drawled, his eyes raking over Lily's disheveled appearance. "What's got you in such a hurry on a night like this?" Lily tried to pull away, but Carter's grip on her arms tightened. There was something in his eyes that made her blood run cold, a predatory gleam that spoke of hidden dangers. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sinclair," Lily stammered, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wasn't watching where I was going. If you'll excuse me, I need to get back to my duties." Carter's lips curved into a cruel smile. Now, what's the rush? A pretty little thing like you shouldn't be all alone on a night like this. Why don't you come have a drink with me?" I'm sure my dear sister won't mind if I borrow one of the staff for a while. Panic rose in Lily's throat as Carter's intentions became clear. She opened her mouth to scream, but before she could make a sound, a familiar voice cut through the night. I believe the lady said she needs to get back to her duties, Sinclair. James emerged from the shadows, his expression thunderous as he strode towards them. Carter's grip on Lily loosened, and she stumbled back, relief washing over her. Well, Carter sneered, his charm evaporating in an instant. If it isn't the noble James Blackwood, coming to rescue the damsel in distress. Tell me, James, does my sister know you have such a vested interest in the help? James's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice level. I suggest you return to the party, Carter. Your behavior is unbecoming of a gentleman, and I'd hate to have to explain to your father why you're no longer welcome in our home. For a tense moment, it seemed as though Carter might lash out. But then he shrugged, his easy smile sliding back into place like a mask. No need to get all worked up, Blackwood. I was just having a bit of fun. You really should learn to lighten up. With a mocking bow, Carter sauntered back towards the house, leaving Lily and James alone in the rain-soaked garden. Are you all right? James asked softly, his eyes filled with concern as he turned to Lily. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. The events of the evening, their kiss, her flight, and now this encounter with Carter, had left her feeling raw and exposed. Lily, about what happened in the library. James began, but Lily cut him off. Please, don't, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can't. I can't do this, James. There's too much at stake. Your family, the investigation. I'm just a maid. I don't belong in your world. Pain flashed across James' face, but he nodded, respecting her wishes. You're right. I'm sorry, Lily. I never meant to put you in this position. Perhaps it would be best if we took a step back from the investigation for a while. Lily's heart sank, but she knew it was for the best. They had gotten too close, let their emotions cloud their judgment. If they had any hope of exposing the truth and bringing justice to light, they needed to refocus on the task at hand. As they parted ways that night, neither of them aware of the multiple sets of eyes watching from the shadows, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The walls of Blackwood Manor seemed to close in around her, its secrets and lies threatening to suffocate her. Little did she know that the true test of her strength and courage was yet to come. The days leading up to the charity gala passed in a blur of frenetic activity and mounting tension. Lily threw herself into her work, desperate to avoid any moments alone with James. She could feel his eyes on her as she moved through the house, could sense the unspoken words hanging between them, but she steeled herself against the ache in her heart. There was too much at stake to let her feelings jeopardize their mission. Veronica, meanwhile, had been unusually quiet, her usual barbed comments and cutting remarks noticeably absent. But Lily wasn't fooled by this sudden change in behavior. She could feel Veronica's eyes on her, watching her every move with a calculating gaze that sent chills down her spine. The night of the gala arrived, and Blackwood Manor was transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystals dripped from every surface, soft music filled the air, and the scent of exotic flowers wafted through the rooms. New York's elite arrived in droves, decked out in their finest jewels and designer gowns. Lily moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling champagne flutes and clearing empty plates with practiced efficiency. Her senses were on high alert, ears straining to catch any snippet of conversation that might be relevant to their investigation. As she passed by a group of men huddled in a corner, their voices lowered conspiratorially, Lily's ears pricked up at the mention of Richard Blackwood's name. Telling you, Blackwood's in over his head this time, one man muttered, his words slightly slurred from too much champagne. If he doesn't come through with the money soon, there'll be hell to pay. Shoo, another man hissed, casting a furtive glance around the room. Not here. We'll discuss this later, at the usual place. Lily's heart raced as she moved away, her mind whirling with the implications of what she just overheard. She needed to find James, to tell him what she'd learned. But as she scanned the room for his familiar form, her eyes instead locked with Veronica's icy gaze. The blonde socialite sauntered over, her blood-red gown swishing ominously with each step. Well, Veronica purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. If it isn't our little Cinderella, all dressed up in her rags. Tell me, dear, are you enjoying the party? It must be so exciting for someone like you to be in the presence of such important people. Lily forced herself to remain calm, to not let Veronica see how her words stung. I'm just doing my job, Miss Sinclair. If you'll excuse me, I need to. Oh, I don't think so, Veronica interrupted, her grip like iron as she latched onto Lily's arm. You and I are long overdue for a little chat. Come with me, won't you? Before Lily could protest, Veronica was steering her through the crowd, her nails digging painfully into Lily's skin. They ended up in a small alcove, hidden from the main ballroom by a heavy velvet curtain. Now then, Veronica said, her saccharine tone dropping to reveal the steel beneath. Let's cut the act, shall we? I know what you've been up to, you little harlot. Sneaking around with my fiancé, plotting behind our backs. Did you really think you could get away with it? Lily's blood ran cold, but she lifted her chin defiantly. I don't know what you're talking about, Miss Sinclair. I've done nothing wrong. Veronica's eyes flashed dangerously. Oh, please. I've seen the way you look at James, the way he looks at you. It's pathetic, really. But let me make one thing crystal clear, James is mine. The Blackwood-Sinclair merger is going to happen, with or without his cooperation. And you? You're nothing but a pawn in a game you can't even begin to understand. You're wrong, Lily said, her voice stronger than she felt. James isn't a prize to be won, and neither is this family's legacy. If you knew half of what was really going on. Oh, but I do know, Veronica interrupted, a cruel smile playing on her lips. I know all about Daddy Blackwood's little indiscretions. The embezzlement, the gambling debts, the unsavory associates. Did you and James really think you were being so clever with your little investigation? Lily's eyes widened in shock. How could Veronica know all of this? And if she did, why wasn't she doing anything about it? As if reading her thoughts, Veronica leaned in close, her breath hot against Lily's ear. You see, my dear, the difference between you and me is that I understand how the world really works. Power, money, influence, that's what matters. Not your pitiful notions of justice or doing what's right. When James and I are married, when our families are joined, we'll be unstoppable. And all of Daddy Blackwood's little problems? They'll disappear, just like that. She snapped her fingers for emphasis, the sound echoing ominously in the small space. You're insane, Lily whispered, horror and disgust warring within her. You'd stand by and let all of this continue? Let innocent people get hurt. Veronica's laugh was cold and brittle. Oh, you simple, naive little thing. There are no innocent people in our world. Everyone has an angle, everyone has a price. It's time you learned that. Now, here's what's going to happen, you're going to disappear. Quit your job, leave New York, never contact James again. If you don't, well, let's just say that things could get very unpleasant for you and that quaint little family of yours back in Ohio. The threat hung in the air between them, and Lily felt as though she might be sick. How had things spiraled so far out of control? She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the curtain was yanked back, revealing a furious James Blackwood. "That's enough, Veronica," he growled, his eyes blazing with a fury Lily had never seen before. "I heard everything. Your little game is over." Veronica's composure cracked for just a moment before her mask of cool indifference slid back into place. "James, darling, I was just having a little girl talk with our charming maid here. No need to get so worked up." But James wasn't buying it. He turned to Lily, his expression softening as he took in her pale face and trembling form. "Lily, are you all right? Did she hurt you?" Before Lily could respond, a commotion from the main ballroom caught their attention. Raised voices and the sound of breaking glass pierced through the ambient noise of the party. "You lying bastard," a man's voice boomed, followed by the unmistakable sound of a fist connecting with flesh. James's face drained of color. "Father," he whispered, before sprinting back towards the ballroom, Lily and Veronica hot on his heels. The scene that greeted them was one of utter chaos. Richard Blackwood lay sprawled on the marble floor, blood trickling from a split lip as he stared up in shock at his attacker, none other than Harold Sinclair, Veronica's father. "You promised me my money would be safe," Harold roared, his face purple with rage. "You swore the investments were sound. And now I find out it was all a lie? That you've been embezzling funds, gambling away our futures?" The crowd of party guests had backed away, forming a ring around the two men as they watched the drama unfold with a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. Eleanor Blackwood rushed to her husband's side, her carefully cultivated composure crumbling as she helped him to his feet. "Richard, darling, are you all right? What is the meaning of this?" Richard Blackwood wiped the blood from his lip, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. "Harold, please, let's discuss this in private. There's no need to make a scene." "A scene?" Harold Sinclair laughed bitterly, his voice rising with each word. "You want to talk about scenes? How about the scene that's going to unfold when the press gets wind of this? When everyone learns that the great Richard Blackwood is nothing but a common thief?" The crowd of onlookers murmured in shock, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Lily felt James tense beside her, his fists clenched at his sides as he watched his family's carefully constructed facade crumble before his eyes. "Father," James stepped forward, his voice steady despite the turmoil evident in his eyes. "Is it true? Have you really been embezzling funds?" Richard's gaze snapped to his son, a flicker of shame crossing his face before it hardened into defiance. "You don't understand, James. I did what I had to do to keep this family on top. The market was turning against us, our investments were failing. I had to take drastic measures." "Drastic measures?" Eleanor interrupted, her voice trembling. "Richard, what have you done?" As the Blackwood family drama unfolded, Lily couldn't help but notice Carter Sinclair slipping away from the crowd, a phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in hushed tones. Something about his furtive behavior set off alarm bells in her mind. Veronica, meanwhile, seemed to have recovered from her earlier shock. She strode forward, her head held high as she addressed the stunned partygoers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's all calm down. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this. Perhaps we should adjourn to the drawing room and discuss this like civilized people?" But her attempt at damage control came too late. The sound of sirens pierced the night air, growing louder with each passing second. Panic rippled through the crowd. Several guests made a beeline for the exits, not wanting to be caught up in whatever was about to unfold. Others pulled out their phones, no doubt alerting the press to the scandal brewing at Blackwood Manor. James grabbed Lily's arm, pulling her close. "We need to get out of here," he whispered urgently. "It's not safe for you to be in the middle of this." Lily hesitated, torn between her instinct for self-preservation and her desire to see this through to the end. "But James, What about your family? We can't just leave them." Her words were cut short as the main doors burst open, revealing a team of FBI agents led by a stern-faced woman in a crisp suit. "Richard Blackwood," the woman announced, her voice ringing out across the now silent ballroom. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Martinez. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Richard Blackwood was handcuffed and led away, Eleanor sobbing quietly as she followed the agents out. Harold Sinclair was escorted to a separate room for questioning, while Veronica stood frozen in shock, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As the chaos unfolded, Lily felt a hand close around her wrist. She turned to find Carter Sinclair, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and determination. "You," he hissed, yanking her closer. "You're coming with me. I know you know more than you're letting on, and I'm not about to let some little maid bring down everything we've worked for." Before Lily could cry out, Carter was dragging her towards a side exit, using the commotion as cover. She struggled against his grip, but he was too strong. "James," she called out desperately, but her voice was lost in the cacophony of the disintegrating party. Carter shoved her into a waiting car, sliding in beside her as the driver peeled away from Blackwood Manor. Lily's heart raced as she realized the gravity of her situation. She was alone, with no one knowing where she was, at the mercy of a man who clearly had everything to lose. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Carter's laugh was cold and humorless. "Somewhere we can have a nice, long chat about exactly what you and Loverboy have been up to. And trust me, sweetheart, you're going to tell me everything you know." As the car sped through the dark streets of New York, Lily's mind raced. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? And more importantly, how was she going to get out of this mess? Meanwhile, back at Blackwood Manor, James was frantically searching for Lily. He had lost sight of her in the chaos following his father's arrest, and a sinking feeling in his gut told him something was terribly wrong. "Lily," he called out, pushing through the dwindling crowd of shocked party guests. "Has anyone seen Lily?" A young waiter approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Blackwood?" I saw Mr. Sinclair leading her out the side entrance a few minutes ago. They seemed to be in quite a hurry." James's blood ran cold. Carter. Of course. He should have known the Sinclairs wouldn't go down without a fight. And now Lily was caught in the crossfire. Without a second thought, James sprinted for the garage, grabbing the keys to his fastest car. As he peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing on the pavement, he made a silent vow. He would find Lily, no matter what it took. And when he did, he would make Carter Sinclair pay for every second of fear he had put her through. The city lights blurred past as James weaved through traffic, his mind racing as fast as the car. Where would Carter take her? What was his endgame? And most importantly, how much time did Lily have? As he drove, James's phone buzzed incessantly. No doubt news of the scandal was breaking, and everyone would be clamoring for a statement from the Blackwood heir. But none of that mattered now. The only thing that mattered was finding Lily and bringing her home safe. Across town, in a dimly lit warehouse by the docks, Lily found herself tied to a chair, facing a pacing Carter Sinclair. The smell of salt water and rusted metal filled her nostrils, and she could hear the distant sound of waves lapping against the shore. "I'll ask you one more time," Carter growled, leaning in close. His breath reeked of expensive whiskey and desperation. "What exactly do you know about our operation? How much evidence have you and James gathered?" Lily lifted her chin defiantly, refusing to be intimidated despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a maid, remember? Isn't that what you and your sister have been saying all along? Carter's hand shot out, gripping her chin roughly. Don't play dumb with me, sweetheart. I've seen you sneaking around, eavesdropping on conversations. You expect me to believe you haven't pieced anything together? Even if I had, Lily spat back. Do you really think I'd tell you anything? You're finished, Carter. The FBI has your father, and it's only a matter of time before they come for you too. A cold smile spread across Carter's face, sending chills down Lily's spine. Oh, you poor, naive little thing. You really think this ends with my father and Richard Blackwood? This goes so much deeper than you could possibly imagine. There are powerful people involved, people who won't hesitate to make troublemakers like you disappear. As if to emphasize his point, Carter pulled out a wicked-looking knife, the blade glinting ominously in the dim light. Now, I'm going to ask you one last time. What do you know? Lily's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing for a way out of this nightmare. She knew she needed to buy time, to keep Carter talking until what? Until James found her? Until the police somehow tracked her down? The odds seemed impossibly stacked against her. But then, a memory flashed through her mind. The mysterious ledger she had photographed in Richard Blackwood's study. The coordinates. Could it be? All right, Lily said, forcing her voice to remain steady. I'll tell you what I know. But first, you have to promise me something. Carter raised an eyebrow, curiosity momentarily overriding his anger. And what's that? Promise me you'll let me go once I tell you everything. No tricks, no sudden accidents. You let me walk out of here, and I disappear. You'll never hear from me again. For a long moment, Carter studied her, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. Fine. You have my word. Now talk. Lily took a deep breath, praying her gamble would pay off. It's all in a ledger in Richard Blackwood's study. Names, dates, amounts, and coordinates. I think they might be locations of offshore accounts or secret meeting places. Carter's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and greed flashing across his face. Coordinates? Are you sure? Lily nodded, her heart racing. I saw them myself. But I didn't have time to decipher them all. If you untie me, I can show you the photo I took. Nice try, Carter sneered, though Lily could see the wheels turning in his head. But I'm not falling for that. You stay right where you are. I need to make a call. As Carter stepped away, phone in hand, Lily allowed herself a small glimmer of hope. She had bought herself some time, but she knew it wouldn't last long. She needed to find a way out, and fast. Meanwhile, across the city, James was growing increasingly desperate. He had checked all of Carter's known hangouts, called in every favor he could think of, but there was still no sign of Lily. As he drove aimlessly through the streets, a thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. The ledger. The coordinates. Could it be that simple? With renewed determination, James sped towards Blackwood Manor. He knew it was risky returning to the scene of his father's arrest, but he had no choice. If there was even a chance those coordinates could lead him to Lily, he had to take it. As he pulled up to the manor, James was relieved to see that most of the police and FBI agents had cleared out. Sneaking in through a side entrance, he made his way to his father's study, praying the ledger was still there. To his immense relief, the small leather-bound book was exactly where Lily had described finding it. James flipped it open, his eyes scanning the pages frantically until he found what he was looking for. A series of numbers that could only be coordinates. Pulling out his phone, James quickly entered the numbers into a mapping app. His heart leapt as a location pinged on the screen, an old warehouse district by the docks. "Hang on, Lily," he whispered, already racing back to his car. "I'm coming." Back at the warehouse, Lily was running out of options. Carter had returned from his phone call looking more agitated than ever, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "You better not be lying to me," he snarled, brandishing the knife once more. "Because if I find out you've been wasting my time." The threat hung in the air, unfinished but crystal clear. Lily swallowed hard, her mind working overtime to come up with a plan. She had to keep him talking, had to buy more time. "Why are you doing this, Carter?" she asked, forcing her voice to remain calm. "You're rich, you have everything you could want. Why risk it all for this?" Carter let out a bitter laugh. "You think this is about money? This is about power, little girl. The kind of power that lets you shape the world to your liking. The kind of power that makes you untouchable." As he spoke, Carter's eyes took on a manic gleam that sent chills down Lily's spine. This wasn't just about greed or self-preservation anymore. This was something far more dangerous, the delusion of a man who thought he was above the law, above morality itself. "And what about James?" Lily pressed, desperate to keep him distracted. "He was supposed to be your brother-in-law. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" At the mention of James's name, Carter's expression darkened. "James," he spat, as if the name itself left a bad taste in his mouth. "Always so noble, so self-righteous. He never understood what it takes to stay on top in this world. He's weak, just like his father turned out to be." Lily's anger flared, momentarily overriding her fear. "James is twice the man you'll ever be," she shot back. "He has integrity, compassion." Her words were cut off as Carter's hand connected with her cheek, the force of the slap snapping her head to the side. Stars exploded behind her eyes, and she tasted blood in her mouth. "Integrity? Compassion?" Carter sneered, grabbing a fistful of Lily's hair and yanking her head back. "Those are luxuries for people who don't have to fight to stay on top. In this world, it's eat or be eaten. And I intend to be the one doing the eating." As Carter raised the knife, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. Both Lily and Carter froze, their eyes darting towards the source of the noise. "NYPD. Drop your weapon and put your hands where we can see them." Relief flooded through Lily as she saw a team of police officers swarming into the warehouse, guns drawn. And there, in the lead, was James, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and determination. Carter, realizing he was cornered, made a desperate lunge for Lily, clearly intending to use her as a hostage. But before he could reach her, a shot rang out. Carter stumbled, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped through his expensive shirt. In a matter of moments, it was all over. Carter was disarmed and cuffed, cursing and threatening legal action as he was led away. And then, finally, Lily was free. As an officer cut through the ropes binding her to the chair, Lily felt her legs give out from under her. Strong arms caught her before she could fall, and she looked up into James's tear-filled eyes. "Lily," he breathed, pulling her close. "Oh God, Lily. I thought I'd lost you." Safe in James's embrace, Lily finally allowed herself to break down. The fear, the adrenaline, the sheer emotional toll of the past few hours came crashing down on her all at once. She clung to James, her body racked with sobs as he murmured soothing words into her hair. As the police bustled around them, taking statements and collecting evidence, Lily and James remained in their own little bubble, drawing strength and comfort from each other's presence. Finally, as the initial shock began to wear off, Lily pulled back slightly, looking up at James with red-rimmed eyes. How did you find me?" A small, tired smile tugged at James's lips. "The ledger. The coordinates. I remembered you mentioning them, and I took a chance. I've never been so grateful for your keen eye and quick thinking. Lily managed a weak laugh, wincing slightly at the pain in her cheek where Carter had struck her. I guess all those years of being invisible, of watching and listening, finally paid off. James's expression darkened as he gently traced the bruise forming on Lily's cheek. I'm so sorry, Lily. This is all my fault. If I hadn't dragged you into this mess. Stop, Lily interrupted, placing her hand over his. You didn't drag me into anything. I chose to help you because it was the right thing to do. And I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. For a long moment, they simply gazed at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Then, slowly, James leaned in, his lips meeting Lily's in a tender, heartfelt kiss. When they finally broke apart, both Lily and James were breathless, their hearts pounding in unison. The chaos of the warehouse faded into the background as they gazed into each other's eyes, a lifetime of unspoken feelings passing between them in that single moment. Lily, James whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I know this isn't the most romantic setting, but I can't wait another moment. I love you. I think I've loved you from the first moment I saw you, even if I was too blind to realize it. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, a mixture of joy and disbelief washing over her. James, I love you too. But what about your family? The scandal? There's so much we have to face. James silenced her with another gentle kiss. We'll face it together. You and me, Lily. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it as a team. Their moment of bliss was interrupted by a polite cough. They turned to find Detective Sarah Martinez, the FBI agent who had arrested Richard Blackwood, standing nearby with a sympathetic smile. I hate to break this up, she said, but we need to get both of your statements. And Ms. Evans, we should have a paramedic check you over, just to be safe. Reality came crashing back as Lily and James nodded, reluctantly separating but keeping their hands firmly intertwined. As they were led out of the warehouse, Lily couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in just a few short hours. The world she had known, the world of servitude and invisibility, had been shattered, replaced by something both terrifying and exhilarating. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of police interviews, press conferences, and legal consultations. The Blackwood Sinclair scandal had exploded into a media frenzy, with reporters camped outside Blackwood Manor day and night, hungry for any new developments. James, thrust into the role of family spokesperson, handled the pressure with a grace and dignity that made Lily's heart swell with pride. He was open and honest about his father's crimes, expressing deep remorse for the harm caused to investors and vowing to make things right. Lily, for her part, found herself suddenly thrust into the spotlight. The story of the humble maid who had helped uncover one of the biggest financial scandals in New York history was too juicy for the press to ignore. She was hailed as a hero by some, vilified as a gold digger by others, but through it all, she held her head high, drawing strength from James's unwavering support. A week after the fateful night of the gala, Lily and James sat in the Blackwood Manor library, poring over financial documents with a team of lawyers and accountants. The task of untangling the web of fraud and deceit woven by their fathers was daunting, but they were determined to see it through. Ms. Evans, one of the lawyers said, looking up from a stack of papers. I must say, your attention to detail is remarkable. You've uncovered connections here that even our forensic accountants missed. Lily blushed at the compliment, still not entirely comfortable with the praise and attention she was receiving. I've always been observant. When you're used to being overlooked, you learn to see things others might miss. James squeezed her hand under the table, a gesture of pride and support that didn't go unnoticed by the others in the room. Their relationship had become something of an open secret, a ray of hope amidst the darkness of the scandal. As the meeting wrapped up, James pulled Lily aside, his expression serious. "There's something I need to talk to you about," he said, leading her out to the garden where they had shared so many secret meetings. Lily's heart raced, a flicker of fear igniting in her chest. "What is it? Is everything okay?" James took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit that Lily had come to find endearing. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About what happens after all this is over." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the scandal, the investigations, and the upheaval of their lives. "The Blackwood name, it's tainted now. No matter what we do, there will always be whispers, always be doubt." Lily nodded, her heart aching for the pain and disillusionment she saw in James's eyes. "I know it's been hard, James. But you're not your father. You're doing everything you can to make things right." A small smile tugged at James's lips. "That's just it, Lily. You see the best in me, even when I can't see it myself. And that's why I've made a decision." He took both of her hands in his gaze intense and unwavering. "I'm going to step down as the heir to Blackwood Enterprises. I'm going to sell my shares, use the money to repay as many of the defrauded investors as possible, and then I want to start over. With you." Lily's eyes widened in shock. "James, are you sure? This is your legacy, your birthright." "My legacy," James interrupted gently, "is what I make of it. And I want to build something new, something honest and good. Something we can be proud of." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as the magnitude of what James was proposing sank in. He was willing to give up everything, his wealth, his status, the only life he had ever known, for a chance at a fresh start with her. "But what will we do?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where will we go?" James's eyes sparkled with excitement and hope. "I was thinking, remember how you once told me about that little bookshop in your hometown? The one that was going out of business?" Lily nodded, a memory of lazy Sunday afternoons spent losing herself in dusty tomes flashing through her mind. "Well," James continued, "what if we bought it? Fixed it up, made it a community hub. A place for books, yes, but also for people to gather, to learn, to connect. We could host literacy programs, book clubs, writing workshops." As James painted a picture of their potential future, Lily felt her heart soar. It was so far removed from the glittering world of Manhattan high society, and yet it felt more real, more meaningful than anything she had experienced in her years at Blackwood Manor. "James," she breathed, cupping his face in her hands. "Are you absolutely sure this is what you want? It won't be easy. We'll be starting from scratch, leaving behind everything you've ever known." James leaned into her touch, his eyes filled with certainty. "As long as I'm with you, Lily, I know we can face anything. You've shown me what true strength and integrity look like. You've made me want to be a better man. And I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love." With that, James dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Lily Evans," James said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you marry me? Will you take this leap with me, start a new life together, and make me the happiest man on earth?" For a moment, Lily was speechless, overwhelmed by the rush of emotions coursing through her. But as she looked into James's eyes, seeing all the love, hope, and promise of a future together, she knew there was only one answer she could give. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, James Blackwood, I will marry you." As James slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a passionate kiss, Lily felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. They had weathered a storm together, uncovered painful truths, and come out stronger on the other side. And now, they were poised to begin a new chapter, one filled with love, purpose, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The news of James Blackwood's engagement to Lily Evans, coupled with his decision to step down from Blackwood Enterprises, sent shockwaves through New York society. Some praised it as a noble gesture, a true attempt at redemption. Others sneered, calling it a publicity stunt or the actions of a man running from his responsibilities. But for Lily and James, the opinions of others mattered less and less with each passing day. They threw themselves into their new venture with passion and determination, working tirelessly to transform the old bookshop into a vibrant community space. The grand opening of Second Chance's Books and Cafe was a far cry from the glittering galas of their past. Instead of champagne and caviar, there were homemade cookies and steaming cups of coffee. The guest list wasn't filled with socialites and business tycoons, but with local families, aspiring writers, and bookworms of all ages. As Lily stood behind the counter, watching James charm a group of wide-eyed children with an animated reading of The Velveteen Rabbit, she felt a sense of contentment and purpose that she had never known in her years of service at Blackwood Manor. "Quite a change from the high life, isn't it?" a familiar voice said. Lily turned to find Eleanor Blackwood standing beside her, a tentative smile on her face. The former socialite looked different, softer somehow, without the polished armor of designer clothes and flawless makeup she had always hidden behind. "Mrs. Blackwood," Lily said, surprise evident in her voice. We didn't expect to see you here." Eleanor's smile turned wistful as she watched her son, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I almost didn't come. But then I realized. I've spent too many years hiding from the truth, from what really matters. I didn't want to make that mistake again." She turned to Lily, reaching out to clasp her hand. "I owe you an apology, Lily. For the way I treated you, for not seeing your worth beyond your role as a maid. You've given my son something I never could, the courage to forge his own path, to be true to himself." Lily felt a lump form in her throat, moved by the sincerity in Eleanor's words. "Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. That means more than you know." "Please," Eleanor said, squeezing Lily's hand. "Call me Eleanor. After all, we're going to be family soon." As if on cue, James looked up from his reading, his face breaking into a radiant smile as he saw his mother and fiancée together. He excused himself from the children, making his way over to envelop both women in a warm embrace. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so glad you came." Eleanor cupped her son's face, her eyes shining with pride and love. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world, darling. This is beautiful. What you and Lily have created here, it's so much more meaningful than anything we had before." As the three of them stood together, surrounded by the warmth and joy of their new beginning, Lily couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a maid overlooked and underestimated, to the heart of a scandal that rocked New York's elite, to a new life built on love, honesty, and the power of second chances. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges to face, wounds to heal, and a legacy to rebuild. But as Lily looked around at the bustling bookshop, at the community they were already starting to foster, she knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Later that evening, as they closed up shop and prepared to head home to their modest apartment above the store, James pulled Lily close, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. "Happy?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with contentment and love. Lily smiled, leaning into his embrace. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. "You know, when I first came to work at Blackwood Manor, I used to dream about being part of that world. The glamour, the wealth, the excitement. I thought that was what I wanted." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And now?" Lily looked around at their cozy bookshop, at the life they were building together. "Now I realize that true happiness isn't about grand mansions or expensive parties. It's about finding your purpose, about making a difference in people's lives. It's about love, real, honest, unshakable love. She reached up, tracing the line of James's jaw with gentle fingers. You gave me that, James. You saw me when no one else did. You believed in me, encouraged me to be more than what others expected. You're my happily ever after. James's eyes glistened with emotion as he pulled Lily into a deep, passionate kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and flushed, he rested his forehead against hers. We gave it to each other, Lily, he whispered. You saved me just as much as I saved you. And I promise you, this is just the beginning of our story. As they locked up the shop and climbed the stairs to their apartment, hand in hand, Lily felt a sense of peace and rightness settle over her. The path that had led her here had been fraught with danger, heartache, and difficult choices. But every step, every trial, had been worth it. For in the end, the maid who had once been mocked and overlooked had not only uncovered a scandalous secret, she had discovered her own strength, her own voice, and a love that would last a lifetime. And as Lily Evans, soon to be Lily Blackwood, drifted off to sleep in the arms of the man she loved, she knew that their greatest adventure was still to come. Together, they would write a new story, one of redemption, of community, and of a love that could overcome any obstacle. In the years that followed, Second Chance's books and cafe became a beloved fixture in the community. Lily and James's story, once fodder for tabloid headlines, became an inspiration to many. They used their platform to advocate for financial literacy, ethical business practices, and the importance of second chances. Richard Blackwood, serving time for his crimes, eventually found his own path to redemption, working with the FBI to uncover other white-collar criminals and using his experience to educate others on the dangers of corporate greed. Veronica Sinclair, humbled by the scandal and her brother's arrest, underwent a transformation of her own. She used her social media influence to raise awareness for mental health issues and the pressures faced by those in the public eye. And Eleanor Blackwood, freed from the gilded cage of her former life, discovered a passion for mentoring underprivileged youth, using her experiences to guide them towards making ethical choices in the face of temptation. As for Lily and James, they faced each new challenge with the same determination and unity that had brought them together. They expanded their business, started a family of their own, and never forgot the lessons learned during that tumultuous time at Blackwood Manor. On quiet evenings, when the shop was closed and their children were asleep, Lily and James would often sit on the small balcony of their apartment, looking out over the town they had come to call home. And as they held each other close, they would marvel at the journey that had brought them here, from a mansion built on lies to a life rich with love, purpose, and the joy of new beginnings. For Lily Evans, once a maid mocked by the guests, had indeed uncovered a secret in the mansion that changed everything. But the greatest discovery of all had been the strength within herself, and the love that had been waiting for her all along. And so, dear reader, we come to the end of our tale. But for Lily and James, for all those whose lives they touched, it was only the beginning of a new and beautiful chapter. A chapter filled with hope, with redemption, and with the enduring power of love to transform even the darkest of circumstances into something truly extraordinary.